Hi everyone, I'm Sloan from SloanBella.com, and I'm back with the second channeled video about Anthony Bourdain. And I wanted to do this video to answer some follow-up questions that you guys have emailed me, texted me, messaged me. And I also wanted to point out that when people are watching channeled videos about anybody, celebrity or not, and watching them on YouTube, on the internet, anywhere that they watch them, even in person, you have to take into account that each of us is an individual in how we do our work. There isn't one way to do the work, and you can't teach somebody how to access that information. They either can access it or they can't. They either get information or they don't. You can hone your skills, you can practice, you can do readings for people, you can do whatever you want, but the truth is you're either born a psychic medium or you're not. The second thing is when you're listening to somebody channel, keep in mind that the other side has as full and vibrant a life as we do on this side, if not more. And they are living with their free will over there. It's an extension of here. It's not even a death, it's an extension. So they have free will to come through as they like. And they can also keep information from people if they want to, or they can release it to some and give pieces to other. It depends how our body energy is coupled with the information, how we express it. Not every medium, you could put 6 in a room to channel the same thing who are basically saying the same thing in different ways, or you could get 6 that say 6 different things depending on the information they're picking up and what their openness to hearing information is, or on the other side, what the spirit wants them to hear. Keep in mind, just because you look at your neighbor's house and you think, I know what's going on, doesn't mean you actually know what's going on. There's layers and layers upon layers based on the personal interaction between that person, you, their family, etc. So you have to keep a very open mind. There is no right or wrong way because it's not, quote, technically provable by science. You can measure brain waves, you can give information. There's a lot of sites out there that register people on their sites. I don't do that because it's me talking to another person, reading them, and if they like how I read them or it's relevant, assuming that they know what I'm saying, maybe they're adopted and they don't know what I'm saying or whatever, it's too much up to human conjecture. So what I do is I do my prayers. I work under the umbrella of God and I get the information I get and I stand by it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, I'm right. I don't really care. I'm giving you the information that I'm channeling. And because I do this work every day, I get a feel for what feels accurate to me. And I can only go on that. And really technically, they could be tricking me. They could be tricking the other media. Who knows? Who knows what really goes on? I just try to really discern it from a neutral and detached position. So when you're watching channeled videos, get a feel for how you feel internally. What do you feel from the person as they're speaking? How do you hear it? Is it clear to you? Does it resonate? It usually hits you right in the stomach area. Like you'll be like, yeah, that sounds right. Of course, none of us were there on the events of any given person when they pass, unless we were there when they passed, which we would know, and then we would have a feeling, but we still don't know the subtle nuances going around energetically. We can see bits and pieces. I don't think we have full access to all the information. I just don't. I think it comes through as the energy in society, and that's going to bring me into the Anthony Bourdain thing. Passing, not thing. Anthony, the energy around him to me was obvious that he didn't commit suicide. Now, some people will say to me, you know, they said he did, people said it, that's fine. But when I felt it, and I'm going on my first instinct when I heard it, and keep in mind with this, I never watched his show and I did not know who he was. I really did not know who he was till I saw the picture on the news on the morning that he passed. I did not have the TV on. Somebody in my house did, and I walked by. Immediately, I'm like, not true. So I got a feel for it, first impression, gut instinct. As I'm connecting to Anthony's energy further, I'm getting a whole other feeling. People ask me, who killed him then if he was in fact killed? And I'm going to give you a little bit of a scenario that I'm picking up around him. I discovered something when I was channeling the first video. I got a very sharp cold pain in my head from a metal instrument. That was very specific to me because it didn't happen before. I don't get headaches. And suddenly I was like trying to, you guys remember I was trying to say what's hitting my head and I was kept going like this. And I was like, it's cold, it's in the freezer, it's metal. I couldn't put my words on it. And then my eyes kind of blurred in from right here. It wasn't a drug or alcohol thing. I'm not saying that Anthony wasn't depressed at times, but this was not the time for that. That's not what was going on right now. I literally got this was something outside that touched the side of his head that reminded me of a frozen metal instrument. That is how it felt to the side of my head for a split second. And I was trying to explain it. Now, I asked further, and I actually consulted with somebody else, one of my BFFs, who's a really good psychic, but I asked her if I was getting this correct. And so we together kind of tried to focus on the energy to heighten our vibration. And she doesn't like to do the camera. Anyway, what I got was very interesting. If you want to know how he died, and I don't know that it would show in an autopsy report. I don't know how it would show in an autopsy report. And I don't even know if the autopsy report is correct, because I'm sure there are different things and different payoffs people can do. I'm not even going there with that. What I saw was an instrument that is used to stun livestock, cows. I got, and it's quite ironic actually that the man was a chef, and I got the instrument that I was feeling on the side of my head was I'm going to use the word like a cattle prod. It was something that stunned the animal, not killing the animal, but stunned the animal. Now, it does seem like it might be a taser, but it wasn't a taser. I went straight to an instrument, and it wasn't a big instrument, but it was a metal instrument, and it wasn't a square instrument. It was like a rod, and that's exactly what I saw when I was trying to point to the side of my head. Now, this instrument, from what I could pick up and what my friend picked up with me, because we had to like raise it. I said, I don't want to say it if it's not accurate. And she said, you probably shouldn't say it at all, because you never know what you're really saying. In other words, who's going to hear it. But I am going to say this. It was an instrument used when they want cattle to be subdued so they can do something, maybe to slaughter them, maybe tie them up, maybe inject them with medicine that they need. I don't actually know what. I'll have to research that after. But I got that strong, and I'm going to go and say that that's what disabled him from being able to fight back. Obviously, he was a big, tall person. So big, tall people can absolutely fight back. I don't know if he was a fighter. I suspect he might have been because of the moods I see around him. But on that day when they say that he committed suicide, I am not getting that. And I'm standing by what I'm saying. I'm really not getting that. And in fact, it doesn't seem like the whole process of his death started that day. I'm going back 23 years, and it started at that time. It was contractual. By contractual, I think it was earthbound contract, not other side contract. So not a soul contract. Well, I'm going to word this a little bit differently. Not a soul contract in the traditional sense of the soul on the other side before we incarnate in. That's not what I'm getting. I'm actually getting on this side, and I feel like Mr. Bourdain was doing something, how would I word this? That they wanted him to shut up about. They wanted him to be quiet. Now, when you ask who killed him, I hear one answer and I get it real strong. So I'm going to say this. Who found him? You say who killed him. I say who found him. Who killed him? Who found him? They go in tandem with that. That's how I'm hearing it. So I want maybe you guys to do the research on that, because I'm not going to say anything about it, but who found him? And why did they find him? And what was going on there? So there's an ulterior situation going around the peripheral. Now, again, people are going to, if you've ever filled out a death certificate for somebody or had a coroner do it, you know there are only 3 things, possibly 4. I think there's natural causes, homicide, drug toxicity. Now, drug toxicity is used in all drug ODs. So they may write in personal notes like what the drug was, but if you OD'd on aspirin, cough syrup, heroin, meth, if you shot it up, snorted it, drank it, ate it, it doesn't matter. It will say drug toxicity. That's the verbiage of it. So there's natural causes, there's suicide, there's drug toxicity, and then there's homicide. Those are the 4 that I remember. Now, it's been 23 years since I've actually watched the coroner's report for a death certificate, but those are your choices. Now, they do make notes. They make notes around the body. You've seen the pictures on all of those crime TV shows where they draw, put little X's around the body of where there was trauma or an issue, and they can write their notes, and they do give you a printed out stack of information about what they would find in the body in the case of a drug toxicity and a suicide, what the body looked like. Keep in mind when we're talking about suicide, and there are many people that commit suicide because they can't handle being in their bodies. And what I found when I channeled that, and I'm going to make a really weird analogy to it, but what I've been shown by people who've actually committed suicide at their own hand because it was too painful to be in their life as they knew it, I found that when their soul incarnates into their body, there's something that is maybe more sensitive about the soul and the feeling against the body. And let me give you an example. Remember when you were a little kid, if you grew up in the snow like I did, and your mom would put like an undershirt on you because you were going to wear a wool sweater and it was going to be itchy and it was going to drive you crazy. So you wore like a little, I call it an undershirt. It's probably a wife beater now, or a little long shirt underneath your sweater so that you wouldn't itch all day. That's how the soul incarnating into the body of a person who's committing suicide felt to me when I've communicated with them on the other side. Feels very much like a wool sweater on your bare skin, so it drives them crazy. That's their sensitivity to the earth. And it can be triggered by anything. Like for a moment they can feel fine, and it's almost like an allergic reaction to the incarnation. I've actually seen it. And when you look at them on a soul level and they show me the body, now this is probably, I'm going to say 5 people I've dealt with. And again, the first suicide I ever dealt with was when I was 16. And this was a girl that lived in an apartment building where I was living. I was already on my own at that time. And this was a girl that lived down the hallway from me. And she appeared in my apartment. And I remember thinking, well, that's weird. I didn't give you a key at the time. And this was a girl, she was a prostitute at the time. And she was a young girl. I think she might have been 17, if that. 16 or 17, very similar in age to me. And she was kind of a hippie chick with long dark hair. And she was really kind of cool. And she appeared in my apartment. So I'm like, what's up? I was asleep. It was in the middle of the night. It was probably, I don't know, around 2:33 in the morning. And when I looked at her, she looked like her. Her name was Bunny. She actually went by the street name of Bunny. Anyway, when I looked at her, she looked normal. So I really thought she was in my apartment. And then when I looked again, I could see like gray down here. And I was like, God, that's really weird. And then she just kind of disappeared out of my sight line. And I thought, well, I must have just dreamt that. So I actually literally went back to sleep. I know not to do that now, but at the time I was like, I'm going back to sleep because I had to get up. The next morning I was woken up about 4:15 by a stretcher going by my door. So I opened my door and literally ran into the body, and they had told me that she had committed suicide by drinking bleach. That was my very first experience. And when she showed me, when she came into my, into my vision line, probably half asleep, half awake, she looked normal. So I really thought she was in my apartment. But then I saw the gray here, which was the bleach. That's actually, she was showing me how she died. So they were not able to save her. And I think she was already dead then, actually. I didn't really pay much attention to how the body looked because immediately she came right around. So when I went back in my apartment, I was able to see her, and I saw her all the way up until the wake. And that was a very interesting suicide because she chose to do it. She definitely took the action to do it, but it was orchestrated by, now this is a weird thing to say, there are some instances in suicide where the person is goaded by the people around them. In other words, their emotional sensitivity is not equipped for the terrorism that's going on around them in an intellectual, emotional, and verbal way. And she had a real idiot boyfriend that was probably 15 years older than her. He was really, truthfully, more of a pimp, but he pretended he was her boyfriend. And if you know anything about that world, that's kind of what they do. But at the time, she really thought he was her boyfriend, and he had been goading her. He was a terribly abusive person. And at the wake, he tried to pick up on other people. It was a whole mess. But that was very interesting because she acknowledged, like, she was in tremendous pain, and yet she was being prompted by this a-hole, by what he was saying and doing. She could not handle, like, she was too vulnerable in her human state to be able to put up a fight. So that's one way of suicide. And then there's others where I've met where the veil is completely open, and this would be where you get your severely schizophrenic people. I've had a few of those that have come to me, a few of people who've passed like that, where they just could never shut it off. So for you psychic mediums out there that can shut it off and aren't always talking to the other side, because what I've been shown in that instance of suicide with people that have severe mental illness is that while they're on this side, they can't make a distinguishment between what is real and what isn't. So if they get a negative energy from the other side in their face all the time, then they have to quiet it down. And on this planet, as you know, there's psych meds, but when you take the psych meds, you can't really be free in your body. I mean, you can to a degree, but there's a lot about the psychiatric medicine that really mutes the personality, so the people have a hard time staying on it. So there's been that. And then I've met several other spirits on the other side who have stepped into the energy as a thought, like, this is it, I'm doing it, fuck it, I'm doing it. And those have been gunshot people, people who have actually shot themselves. And immediately after, the energy is like, I don't know why I did it. Like, there's some recognition. This has been my experience. Either way the suicide happens, either way the person's personality is, I don't get that from Anthony Bourdain. That was not happening at this time. What I get with him, now I'm not saying he wasn't moody. He was a Cancer and a Capricorn moon. And that's, I have a kid like that, Cancer, Capricorn moon. He was a Leo rising at the time. And I'm not saying he wasn't under stress. The Capricorn moon is calculating. The Cancer is moody. So you have calculating and moody. So you have the combinations. So when the moods are experienced, the analyzing of the energy of those moods is given in a different way. But what I felt, and I asked straight out, I asked spiritually straight out, tell me if you committed suicide. And I just get I get no, shaking head, no. So this was not what happened. Now, my feeling around it, as I said, is that this man feels as though he orchestrated his own death by his actions on Earth 23 years prior. So there's some connection to that time. Now, when I look at his eyes radiate very brightly, which is a good thing because his energy's raising now. So there's an energy vibration. He's been over there. It hasn't quite been a year, I don't think, or maybe it has. Maybe it was 2017. I forget if it's 2017 or 18. It might be a year and a bit. But his energy in his eyes, to me, is actually elevating. I'm seeing a deeper kind of electric look through the eyes. And when I look at him, I get, and I'm looking right now in my head, but what I do get with him is the information that I'm trying to pick up on is there's bits and pieces of it coming through according to what's going on in other areas. He's actually showing me a chessboard and a chess game. So I'm being shown that. So I know that there's other issues going on in other scopes on Earth before this chess game is over with. So the game of what happened to him, and that's how he's referring it, continues on. This was not a suicide. This man was not wanting to kill himself at the time. I mean, there were things going on. He was Cancers are going to feel up and down and then push away. They're very push-pull with their energy. That is the energy of them. And keep in mind, Cancer people's karma energetically is to be born into a family that does not give them what they need on an emotional level for them to find their own family. And they often feel abandoned, orphaned, rejected, however you want to word that. But in this particular instance, Anthony Bourdain was in the process of restructuring his life. It had spiraled out of control before. It was not that way right now. And of this, I'm positive. And I go right back to you guys who asked me how what I was seeing with that cold instrument on the side of the head. What I was seeing was an actual, and I'm going to use it, it's used with cattle. That's what I'm actually seeing. I have no idea the significance of that or even what it is, but that's how I want to describe it to you, as some kind of a stun electric cattle prod. It isn't a branding thing, it is a prod. It is a metal rod. It's not as long as it was for perhaps some people. Like, it's not huge, it doesn't take up my whole room. It's not like that. But when you ask who killed him or who was with him or how it happened, if indeed it wasn't suicide, I'm going to pose this question back to you. This is what he keeps saying. Who found me? That's what he's saying. Now, do we really know who found him, or is it the report of one person finding him? Did somebody else find him? He's just right now saying, if you want to know who did it, ask who found me. And that's the information I have for Anthony Bourdain. So hopefully this follow-up video has explained a combination of things. I tried to answer everything quickly before my clients get here.